In 1698, a mysterious prisoner was transferred to the Bastille, Paris's most famous fortress prison. His face hidden behind a mask of black velvet, he became known as the Man in the Iron Mask. Over the years, countless tales and theories have sprung up about who this man was and why he was kept in such secrecy. Some said he was the twin brother of Louis XIV. Others believed he was an important political figure, or perhaps even a fallen noble. But as the fog of legend slowly clears, the truth behind his identity is more tragic, bizarre, and unsettling than any fiction. The man's imprisonment was first noted during the reign of Louis XIV, the Sun King, one of the most powerful monarchs in French history. The mystery of his identity captivated and horrified the French public, and thanks to writers like Voltaire and Alexandre Dumas, it spread far beyond the borders of France. Voltaire was one of the first to stoke the fires of curiosity when he claimed that the man wore an iron mask that no one had ever seen removed. Dumas would later use the figure to weave his own fictionalized version of events, spinning a tale of royal intrigue, betrayal, and hidden identities. But to understand the real story, we must set aside the legends and dig into the scant but revealing historical records that exist. While many details remain elusive, there are undeniable facts that give us a glimpse into the life of this mysterious figure. Our story begins with a man named Eustache Dauger, a minor nobleman of the French court. Born into a family of modest wealth, Dauger was not a figure of much prominence, but that would change when he became entangled in matters far beyond his control. It is suspected that Dauger's misfortune stemmed from his knowledge of sensitive political secrets that involved some of the most powerful figures in France, including King Louis XIV himself. In the late 17th century, France was a web of political intrigue, espionage, and backstabbing. The royal court was rife with plots against the king, financial scandals, and whispered secrets. The crown was deeply involved in wars and schemes abroad, as well as the politics of its own nobility. And within this environment, men like Dauger were pawns in much larger games. Dauger had been employed as a servant to a number of influential families before his fall from grace. He moved through different circles, his knowledge of state secrets growing. One theory suggests that he may have learned of a scandal involving the royal finances. Perhaps he had discovered evidence of corruption, embezzlement, or worse. This knowledge made him a dangerous man. Another theory posits that he had been privy to a scandal involving Cardinal Mazarin, the powerful advisor to Louis XIV and regent during the king's early years. Mazarin had many enemies, and if Dauger knew something damaging, it would explain why he was so tightly controlled. What we do know is that in 1669, Louis XIV issued direct orders for Dauger's arrest. His incarceration was overseen by the feared and meticulous prison governor, Benin d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars. Dauger was initially placed in Pignerol, a fortress prison in the remote Alps, where Saint-Mars took personal responsibility for his confinement. The king's instructions were clear. Dauger was to be kept in total secrecy. His face was always to be hidden when in the presence of others, his identity was never to be revealed, and any correspondence regarding him was to be burned. The idea that the man wore an iron mask for the duration of his imprisonment is an embellishment, popularized by later writers. In fact, contemporary records indicate that he wore a black velvet mask, still a potent symbol of secrecy, but far less theatrical than the metallic version. Nevertheless, the mask became a focal point of the legend, perhaps because it symbolized not just the man's hidden identity, but the ruthless control exerted by the monarchy. Dauger's imprisonment at Pignerol was a harsh and lonely existence. He was confined in a small windowless cell with minimal contact with other prisoners. Saint-Mars was instructed to ensure that Dauger was never allowed to speak with anyone, though at times he was permitted to have a servant. Even then, all conversation was forbidden, and any breach of this rule could result in immediate execution. The paranoia surrounding this prisoner was extreme, and one has to wonder what knowledge Dauger possessed that warranted such measures. As Saint-Mars was promoted to various higher positions within the French prison system, he took Dauger with him, each time ensuring that the prisoner remained under the strictest conditions of secrecy. In 1681, Saint-Mars was transferred to the fortress of Exilles, and Dauger followed. By then, the prisoner had already spent over a decade in isolation, his identity still a closely guarded secret. At every new location, rumors would start again about the masked man. Was he a noble, a disgraced general, a foreign spy? The whispers grew louder, especially as Saint-Mars' precautions remained unrelenting. By 1698, after nearly 3 decades of imprisonment, Dauger was moved to the Bastille, where his presence sparked the imaginations of many. The Bastille, at the heart of Paris, was home to numerous political prisoners, and though the masked man remained out of sight, his story began to slip out through fragments of conversation between guards and other inmates. It was in the Bastille that he would spend his final years, as the legend of the Iron Mask began to take shape. In 1703, after 34 years of imprisonment, Dauger died. His burial records describe him as Marchiali, a false name given by Saint-Mars. The man had lived and died in anonymity, his true identity still concealed by layers of royal deception and paranoia. So who was the man in the Iron Mask? While no definitive answer has ever been proven, the strongest evidence points to Eustache Dauger, a man caught up in the shadowy world of court intrigue. What secret did he know that made Louis XIV so determined to erase him from history? Was it financial corruption, a political scandal, or something far darker involving the very fabric of the French monarchy? There are theories, of course. One of the most popular is that Dauger was involved in the affair of the poisons, a notorious scandal that rocked the French court in the 1670s. The affair involved a network of fortune-tellers, poisoners, and black magic practitioners who sold their services to the nobility, and even some members of the court. The accusations reached as high as Louis XIV's mistress, Madame de Montespan. Could Dauger have known too much about the royal involvement in the affair? If so, it would explain why the king went to such lengths to silence him. Others have suggested that Dauger's fate was linked to espionage. During the time of his imprisonment, France was embroiled in various international conflicts, including a complex and often treacherous relationship with England. Some historians speculate that Dauger might have been a spy, or at the very least, someone who had become entangled in espionage activities. If he had knowledge of sensitive state secrets, both domestic and international, it would provide a compelling reason for his extended imprisonment. Whatever the reason, the Sun King's decision to keep Dauger's identity hidden until the very end reveals just how dangerous his knowledge was perceived to be. The mask he wore, both literal and symbolic, became a representation of the absolute power that Louis XIV wielded over life and death. To cross the king, even indirectly, was to invite a fate worse than death, erasure from existence itself. In the centuries since his death, the man in the Iron Mask has become an enduring symbol of mystery, tyranny, and the darker side of royal power. His story inspired countless works of fiction, from Voltaire's biting commentary on the French state to Dumas' swashbuckling tales of heroism and adventure. But behind the romanticized versions of the story lies a tragic truth. A man who lived for more than 3 decades in total isolation, his identity and fate controlled by the whims of a paranoid king. To this day, no one can say with absolute certainty who the man in the Iron Mask was or what he knew. But his story reminds us of the fragility of power, the dangers of knowing too much, and the lengths to which those in power will go to protect their secrets. In a world where kings ruled with absolute authority, one man's silence became a matter of national security. And in that silence, a legend was born.